I got to tell you guys what a great honor it is to be here this morning with these two guys who really have
Sorry, I went through 20 years of this.
who really have built one of the great franchises in television history. And when you think of NCIS, it really does begin and end with these two right here. Mark, the ultimate leader, and you know, it's funny because I always look at him and I think of, I don't think of him as an actor. I think of him as a football player, a football star. He's a great quarterback. He was a football star. But great quarterbacks know how to lead. And then Leon, who was always there. You don't go to set at NCIS and don't see Leon. He was always there to help keep things authentic and also integrate the real NCIS. And one of the cool things is how these two have now come back together to do Ghosts of Honolulu. And the book is fantastic. And I just want to first ask Mark, why this book and why now? And I do want to mention, it is a New York Times bestseller. Let's not forget that.
It's working. Does this work?
No, not right now. You gotta turn it on.
Can you hear it?
No.
Here.
I just walk. No. Okay. Give you the one that doesn't work. That makes a lot of sense.
Sorry about that.
Turn it on.
You need some technical advice.
Testing.
Why now? Right?
Yeah, why now?
Because the first one was successful. Leon, I met him 20 years ago, so for me, trying to research a character and trying to research an agency at the time, that if you looked on the internet and you looked up NCIS, there was nothing. Now, if you look on the internet, NCIS, there's 2,100 pages of information, and 2,000 of those are about a TV show. Leon Carroll was the first NCIS real agent I ever met, and I worked with him for 20 years on the Mothership show. There wasn't a scene, certainly not an interrogation scene, or in some cases just how to walk down a corridor, that I didn't talk to him about or ask his opinion on, or try to understand what his job was at that moment. It's my choice as an actor to try to bring that into a character, so if the character worked, Leon's responsible for that in my mind. And when this idea of a book came up, it was a very different idea than what it's become, but from the beginning I said I would not touch this idea without Leon Carroll. And he's my friend, but I also respect so much his job and what he's done quietly for many, many years, most of which he won't talk about, but that's also the fun of this job, is telling a story that no one's been asked about, and actually no one's maybe even been able to talk about. And to ask someone a question that they can talk about after not talking about it for a very long time has been so rewarding. And the fact that this first book was as successful as it was, the idea of a second book was always talked about. The idea of a third book is talked about.
We'll be there.
But this has been a great learning experience, and also great fun.
Leon, I want to ask you, what was there before NCIS? You had such a great career, but before NCIS, and that's what I love about this book, is it really is telling the origin story of what there was beforehand.
Thanks, Kevin, and thanks to everybody for being here. I noticed a lot of NCIS actual people who work the shows are in the audience, so thanks for being here, for the support. We go back to ONI, Office of Naval Intelligence, 1882. So we were before the FBI and all the other three-letter agencies that you've heard about. our transition was a little unique because for many, many years, we didn't want anybody to know who we were. And about 1966, that all changed. The emphasis went more to criminal work as opposed to counterintelligence. And even then, until the show, people didn't know who we were. We started with this book mainly because it shows the origins of NCIS, before that NIS, before that ONI, and the fact that we really centered on doing intelligence, counterintelligence work. And of course, then when the show hit the mothership, as we call it, it just went gangbusters. When I came on, we were still, because we were so unknown, we were still calling ourselves ONI. That had gone at least 15 years before I came on the job. And then we had Naval Investigative Service. Somebody asked us, well, who are you? We'd say Naval Intelligence, because nobody knew who NIS was. So what this show has done, and now even the books, is it's brought to light what we've done. And the show, except for the new show now going back to 1991, the original show didn't go back into that type of history. We did 2 episodes, hiatus 1 and 2, that kind of showed Gibbs coming on the job. But other than that, we kind of stayed in the present. So I think the book shows kind of the original idea and concept of what the agency did moving into today.
This book also helps bring to life hidden figures, and I believe there are so many hidden figures in history who did significant things, but they are overlooked. And Mark, how important is it that you are able to bring a real hidden figure to life and tell his story?
It's important to understand that the fact that nobody knew about this agency and what they did is how they did their work, right? So there's a part of doing a TV show where you're walking up to someone who's never really said what they do and say, look, I'm trying to play you, so can you tell me all the secret things you've done and don't want to talk about? Right? So there's a bit of a rub there, because this agency did their job very well for a very long time, whether you call it ONI, Office of Naval Intelligence, or you call it NIS or NCIS, whatever those different generations are. That's why this story of Doug Wada and Pearl Harbor and the backdrop seemed to us to be the place to start. NCIS as an agency now in this present day still does what they were doing then. And the individuals, the men and women who do that job, don't care if you know who they are. and they do that job really well, and it's a really hard job. It's a dangerous job. It's a job people do who love their country. And that this little TV show has now lasted 20 years and birthed other TV shows and birthed a book and now a second book, and all of you sitting here on a Saturday morning wanting to ask questions is so far beyond whatever it was Leon and I talked about 20 years ago that I can't even really grasp that. It's a compliment to the show. Kevin was there first day of the show in the very beginning, and he knows what that's about. He knows that was just one stop he had that day on 16 other shows that were debuting that year to see if any of those lasted more than a couple of episodes. And here we are 20 years later saying this has been such a hugely successful venture. And that's really the reason we're here now today on this, because this is really getting an opportunity to tell the history of some of those people that were never talked about. And Leon and I were in a car in New York doing publicity on this book last year. And got a call from the Wada family, which was such a rewarding experience. Because the truth is, we were telling the story, and we didn't really know if they would be receptive to the idea of that being said. And they were. They loved it, and the idea that now people are talking about Doug Wada and they know who he is. Leon had been an agent for 22 years, special agent for 22 years. He'd never heard of Doug Wada's name. And that's how classified that agency is, okay? So more than anything, I'm happy Leon learned about Doug Wada.
You know, it's funny you mentioned the show in which you built, and last time I'm gonna just fawn over you, but I do want to say that. No, what Mark and Leon built is incredible, but the thing that I was most impressed about is that when you go to set, Mark, the first time I ever meet you, he says, "Hey guys, BT is here. Let's knock out these interviews. Come on, let's go. Here we go, team, pull together." And everybody came over, they did their interviews, and then he went back to work. You don't see that everywhere else. You don't see where there's a clear leader who says, "Hey, let's go, let's do this." And also, I have to say, great food. Oh my God. Great food. But I want to get back to the book. And you also do a great job of painting a picture of what it was like to be a Japanese American at that time in Honolulu. And that's kind of the thing that hooked me first at the book as I started to read it. The detail that you went in to tell these people's stories and the push and pull of why they did what they did. And Leon, I want to ask you about that, of telling that history and how beautifully you guys tell it.
Yeah, Kevin, that was one of my major concerns. We're telling a story about a Japanese American Nisei generation who basically came to our agency and, for lack of a better way of putting it, was looking at his own people. Because our country thought that if you were Japanese, whether you're born there or born here, you were against the United States. And that was something that I kind of knew about coming up, south side of Chicago, black individual, cops treating us like, whatever, which is why I got into law enforcement. But yet, being looked at by some of my own people is somebody that's working for the man, right? So I could definitely understand Doug's dilemma. And that was one of the issues that he dealt with that we found out in doing research on this book. But I think more than that was what he brought to the table was he was able to convince people that his generation of called Nisei were as loyal to this country as any other American. And that was great. Getting back to the story with Mark in the car, we had tried to contact the family, and previous guys who had done research had actually talked to the son, but had gone dark for years. This story goes back actually 20 years. And so I was kind of worried that the family didn't want to, I even called and left Mark Harmon's name, and I didn't get a call back. So I thought, no, they don't want to talk to us. But about halfway through our New York tour, I get a call and I look at my phone and I go, I don't know this person. It's probably somebody already complaining about something we said. And I noticed it was a Japanese surname, and I go, I better answer this. And it was, I won't say his name, but it was the grandson of Doug Wada. And his comment was, Leon, I'm really sorry that we ghosted you guys. Speaking of this, we ghosted you guys on this. But we want to thank you. What you're doing for my grandfather is awesome. And I asked him, I says, well, how did you find out about this? He goes, you won't believe this, but we had done the day before, we had done what's called a satellite tour, where you talked to like 26 different outlets across the country. 2 of them were in the Bay Area, which is where they live. And he says, a friend of my mom's, who I thought was older than she is, she's in her 80s, but a friend of Doug Wada's daughter called her and says, hey, you got to turn on the TV. They're talking about your dad. And that's how they found out about it. And when he called me, I said, you've made this whole book worthwhile to me, because I was really concerned whether or not the family would be on board with this book. And since then, they've been really, really good. We ended up sending them Wada's name. I had asked the son, I says, well, did your dad talk about, what he did during the war? He says, no, he was really quiet about that until we gave him a couple of shots of bourbon. And so the nickname then became Bourbon and Wada. So
Wow. Mark, you said they ghosted. How, were you trying to get in touch with them and you couldn't, or what was happening?
yeah, that was kind of my thing. Going back 20 years, there were two agents, Matt Parsons and Vic McPherson, who they had both served in Japan, and they had heard a little bit about WADA, and they created this history site called the NCISA Association Organizations History Project, and that story was just a small piece on that. And so when I asked them about it, they go, oh, we've got all of these, we've been doing this for 20 years. You got a chance to do a book? And I'll tell you how the book thing came up. But I said, yeah, we really are looking at doing this. And so they says, we have all of this material. So guess what? I get boxes of research that they had done for like 20 years that's still sitting in my office at home. And I keep telling them, the book's over, can you guys want this stuff back? And they go, no, we're just happy that the story is being told, and they wouldn't take any money or any favor or anything like that about it. But the way the book idea started was Mark and I had been talking for years about the show kind of getting further and further away from reality. And he'd sit there and he goes, Leon, would you guys do that? I mean, is this a story, a good story? Is this real? And I'd say, no, Mark, it's not real. And he says, well, if we ever get a chance to tell some real stories, we're going to do it. So one day he calls me and he says, Leon, remember what we've been talking? This is like 15 years later. Leon, you remember what we've been talking about for a long time? I go, Mark, we've talked about a lot of stuff for a long time. And he goes, no, telling real stories about NCIS. And I go, oh, yeah. He goes, we have the opportunity to do that. And so the rest is history. We've gone into 2 books now, and hopefully you guys will like this book. The paperback, I see a lot of you have that. And actually, I have not seen that paperback. There were some things that were added, and we can talk about that as we go on.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you, Mark, real quick, though, about NCIS and what the agency means to you, because you visited, you've hosted, so many people throughout the years came here. But for an agency that now has just as many applicants, it was just the FBI that had more applicants than NCIS, and much of that due to the show. What does it mean to really shine a light on an American agency and people doing work like that is under wraps in many instances?
Well, again, Kevin, as an actor, if you do a pilot, I didn't expect to like the script I was reading. I was doing other things, and I talked to my wife about, I was doing movies and stuff and being gone, young family, trying to stay home. Read this pilot script, liked it, liked the characters. First day we worked 23 hours. Wasn't exactly what I expected. I was home, meaning I was sleeping there, kind of, a couple hours. But from the very, very beginning, the story of this agency was different. And my allegiance was always to Leon and another TA that we had on the show that was also a SA and with the agency, and that's what I dug into. I dug into the realies and wanted to know about what it was. How would you handle this? How would you handle this interrogation? How would you handle this crime scene? And I never forget Leon, one of the things he said, don't forget to look up. It's like, what? I mean, because you look up on the set, you see lights, you see grips hanging over the top looking down at you, But why couldn't the evidence be up, right? So that's when you see Gibbs for 20 years walking into a crime scene going like this. I'm not looking at the gaffer. I'm looking at what he told me to look at. But little things like that are really important to me. And if they're important to a character, then maybe it's important to a small piece of the lifeblood of a show. Any actor thinks the opportunity to do a pilot, you get 10 shows, you get a year, you get 3 years, you're livid, man. I mean, that doesn't happen a lot. And then to have the success that this show has entertained and birthed the spin-offs of so many other versions of NCIS, which brings me to Origins, which is coming up, and you need to watch that.
Oh, we're gonna get to that. Oh yeah.
But I just really felt I owed this to Leon Carroll. That's what I felt, and I felt that my payback, and it's not individual, it's a lot of people. What he came there to do, and then people don't understand this, but when the show debuted, it didn't jump out right away. We were struggling. We were with a third place network that for a while probably didn't have anything to replace us with, and because of that we benefited. We changed different time slots. We were up against Dancing with the Stars. Not a place you want to be on that schedule.
American Idol too.
And Kevin remembers all that because he was on set in a day when they did 20 pilots, 20 different shows, and 19 of them would fail. So there's longevity in this show, and because of that, this agency, and some of that draws attention to an agency that didn't ask for it in the first place. The fact is, they did their work really well and still do, without anybody knowing what they did. And I respect that. And part of that hands off to both of us with literary in these books, because we're learning at the same time you're learning reading the book. There's information about Doug Wada and the agency at this time that I'm sure Leon had heard about, or if he didn't, he learned about, and so did I. So part of this for us is about opening doors and letting people talk who haven't had the opportunity to be asked, and tell that story that to us is important to convey.
By the way, it is a little scary to look up and see that you're against this juggernaut called American Idol, and you turn around and you say, oh, but look at who is the biggest show on the planet. And you guys did that against, stacked ABC and different networks, stacked shows against you. And to do what you did, to bring in the numbers at a time when numbers were declining, you built numbers. It was an amazing thing to watch and go out to that set. And it was also amazing to go out there and see the real life NCIS people and the excitement they had of watching the show and being on that set. It was very cool to sit back there and watch that. Leon, I want to ask you. Okay.
Not that I want to take over.
No, please, no. I'm sorry. I get excited. I get excited. I'll tell stories all day. I get excited when I'm sitting with you two.
But as you know, as you just mentioned, we had an open set for visitors at that time, all the way up until COVID. And one of the concerns that I had was how my fellow colleagues at the agency would look at the show. And we started having agents come out, and I was shocked. First off, for 2 years, most of our crew, many of our cast never knew that this was a real agency. They thought the NCIS was an acronym. So I spent 2 seasons just educating them. But I was amazed because people in our crew would come up and say, Leon, are you gonna have this person come, that person? We really love it. And what they loved about it was showing what they do for the show. And so I think when you have agents who are signed all over the world, we have 126 offices worldwide, they go back to their countries, their areas in the United States, they talk about the show, people then watch. this show became really, really famous, more famous overseas. He's talking about the American Idol time. When we hit American Idol and started beating them, I knew we had arrived. But this show had been much more popular overseas.
I mean, you say it like it's nothing. No, you were a big American Idol. You were the biggest show in the world. It was like anywhere you went in the world, they knew who you guys were. I want to go back to the book real quick for a second, and I want to ask you about some of the new details that we get to learn because of this. And were those new details to you as you research the book? 'Cause there are things in there that you're like, what? It changes the way you think about the attack on Pearl Harbor.
Kevin, you're exposing us here. I would say in the paperback, a couple of things. We found certain mistakes, which just two, by the way, factual mistakes that we corrected in there, and they were about Doug Wada and when he was commissioned and that kind of thing. The other thing we did, if you have the hardback, there's not one picture of Doug Wada in that hardback.
That was really stupid.
Well, it's a long story, and that goes with dealing with the family. So I did ask the family for the paperback if they could provide pictures. And the pictures of the family that are in that paperback that you have were provided by the family. So that just, again, you guys have a better product just from that standpoint. And one funny thing that I thought was interesting, and only one person pointed this out to me, is the difference between tenant, T-E-N-E-E-N-T, and tenant, T-E-N-A-N-T. We did it wrong in the book. So yeah, that's been corrected. Tenants of a religion are different from a tenant who rents your property. They're spelled different, but they kind of sound the same. So that's a mistake I made. So
Stop. No, but it's fabulous, and there are a lot of secrets in there about the attack. But who knew?
yeah, well, I was a counterintelligence guy most of my career with the agency, and Doug Wada did the same thing. A lot of the things he was doing starting in 1938 actually, but during the war itself, were things that we continued to do. Watching the enemy come into port, those kinds of things. Running different types of operations where you have undercover agents, or we used a different term for them, but criminal-wise, as CIs, we call them something different. But those were things that were happening then, and they did it without the training. Doug Wada was brought on mainly because of his language skills, and they were having a real problem finding the right person. And I don't want to, how many of you actually read the hardback? Okay, good, I won't tell you this story. So it's in the paperback, but the way he was recruited was very, very interesting and very, very sneaky, but not different from how it was done when I was an agent back in the 80s. So that's kind of what you'll find in that book. But I think the counterintelligence field is always there. The folks that are doing it now, the FBI, CIA, all the military agencies have counterintelligence elements, and we don't say much. There's a lot. He thinks we just don't like him because we don't tell him what's going on. but we're sworn to life. We signed this piece of paper that says, hey, you can't talk about this stuff. So, and we all the stuff that's in here though, because it's so old, it's World War II stuff, there's no problem. It's been declassified, and I still have some declassified docs in my house. But that's how it works.
I see your wife back there shaking her head.
The reason I love this is he's been talking for 4 minutes and he's said nothing. You know no more now than you did 4 minutes ago. And that's why they're so good at what they do. And that's why you don't know about them. And that's part of the real thrill in this as we move forward in this book, the next book, maybe the next book, maybe the next book, whatever. This is the right guy for me to be a partner of, and to trust in how this is told to you as a reader. There are parts of this book that are totally surprising, and there are parts of this book that they're still not talking about. And the same thing with the next one. And if we did a third book, it'd be the same thing with that. And you just got to be thankful that they're on your side, and that what they do is really hard work and gratifying, I'm sure. And I have a respect for that, and that's really the only reason to do this.
And I say again, the story is beautifully told, and the detail that takes you back in time, and I feel like it gives you a perspective of something you didn't really understand, because we tend to see history from our point of view, or people like us point of view, and so the beauty is it's told through the lens of a Japanese American man living in Honolulu. It's fantastic. Can we talk about NCIS origins? What can you, Mark, what can you tell us now? Because we've had a chance to meet the cast, and I've seen a little bit. It's very different. I'll leave it there. It's very different. What can you tell us? I love this pause. This is always the like, Kevin.
The agency in 1990 was a very different place than it is now, and certainly different than what you know in the TV show now. It just seemed that the idea of that time period, not so much the fact that a young Leroy Jethro Gibbs was a fresh agent at that time, in Camp Pendleton. The office is a Quonset hut. It's a lot different than what you know from the mothership. Certainly so thrilled about the assembled cast on this show. We got everybody we wanted, and I've only seen 2 episodes, so I'm kind of, I mean, we've done like 7, so and I have the ability in this crowd of people to actually pull someone from the audience to have them come up here and explain what you're asking me.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to do that. All right.
Might be a few people.
But I do hope people tune in and give it an opportunity in its own merit for what it is trying to be in telling the story of this agency. And it's different than the mothership, designed as, and darker, just as factual, and hopefully characters that you will be able to invest in. There'll be humor, there'll be a lot of character, and there'll be a story. I don't know what order that's going to come in, but I'm proud of what this has been so far, and it's hard right now because nothing is out there for you to see, and you are who we all wait to hear from. So come a few weeks from now, we'll start getting word back quickly, and we'll know quickly if it works or doesn't. And then it'll really start getting fun. But I'm thrilled with what I've seen so far and what this has been.
Leah, you've been on set. Your
Who
thoughts
told,
so
who told
far?
you that, Kevin?
I just heard, you know.
It's been on set.
So, yeah, it's different. I mean, all the writers and the cast are all really young people. And I'm waiting for them to roll out the rocking chair for me to sit in. And in fact, I won't embarrass anybody, but we do have one of those cast members in this audience right now. I won't point that person out unless that person wants to be identified, but I love that person. But no, it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun working with younger people. And they don't know 1991. That's the real funny part about it is, and that was halfway through my real career in 1991. But I'm always giving advice on current day, And so when they ask, sometimes I give them the wrong information, like whether they wear caps at crime scenes. We didn't do that back in the old days. No cell phones. You got to go to a payphone. Those kinds of things. Pagers we're in. So I have to really tax my memory. I'm getting up there in age, so I'm trying to do a better job of remembering all that stuff. But it's just been really, really good. Good fun time. Totally different.
You need a technical advisor to show some of these cast members how to dial a phone.
They
never
solved-
thought about that.
They solved that problem, Mark. They're only using touch-tone phones, so they don't have to.
Not a rotary, huh?
No, not a rotary, because that would really terrify them. I mean, the whole thought of a rotary phone.
To be honest, we were just getting, at Camp Pendleton, they were so far behind. They were just getting rid of rotary phones when this show started, right? So it's kind of interesting. And I won't give you any of the secrets of what goes on in terms of what you'll see and you'll say, they didn't have that in 1991, but there'll be a few of those. But yeah, it's been great to see the sets. They've done an awesome job with sets and aging them. The building that they're using for the NCIS office, for NIS, that's what we're calling it. It's NCIS Origins, but you'll hear in dialogue NIS all the time. We didn't change the name till 1992 or 93. But the building that they're using, the exterior, looks exactly like the old building, which they've torn down at Camp Pendleton, but it looks exactly like it.
91, we all remember 91 like it was yesterday, so it's kind of scary when you have actors who are like, 91? I was not here for 91. Right? You look around. All right, we have some questions, all right? And we're going to get to some of these audience questions because there's some fun ones, but how about this one, Mark? What was your first role?
There was a show in the 60s called Ozzie and Harriet.
Oh,
I was old enough to be my age, or I'll nod their head. Everybody else is looking at me like, what is that? Ozzie Nelson, his son was married to my oldest sister, Chris. And I knew Ozzie Nelson because I was a lifeguard in Laguna Beach and he played volleyball on the court behind my station. I knew him more as an individual from that than anything family. And he called me actually and said he was doing a show at the time called Ozzie's Girls, which was a half-hour show, no audience. It was just a comedy. Brenda Sykes and Susie Sennett, two stars of the show, and he had a guy who was supposed to make an appearance at the end as a gorilla. And the guy got sick and couldn't come in, and would I do it? It was like that afternoon. And I was just out of college. I was selling shoes at the time. It was one day. It was $648, which is more than I made in a month. And he said, will you come and do this? And I said, you nuts? I'll be glad to do that, right? So I went down, and it was one scene, one line. I knocked on the door. They opened the door. I was there in a full gorilla outfit. You never saw my face. And I said, my name is Harry King Kong. Which way is the Empire State Building? And I said it just about like that. And then in the titles at the end, when they went through the titles and they did everybody individually, I got to take off my head and go like that. That's my first role.
1 minute you're in the Rose Bowl, the next minute you're in a costume knocking on the door. Ricky Nelson, though, wow. All right, this one's for you, Leon. Will there be a follow-up either to this book or future novels along this line? I'll let you tell that.
Are you talking this book, Ghost of Honolulu?
Yeah. Will there be a follow-up?
Yes, Ghost of Panama. We have completed that. It should be out in November, and it really details the agents that were there a year before I was there, when they took it down Manuel Noriega. And we're telling this story through the eyes of one of the special agents who was there at the time, but we encompassed everybody that was in the office. And it was really a near and dear story to me, because when I got there about 13 months later, I still saw bullet holes in the wall, and that from that particular Operation Just Cause is what it was called. So that's our next book. It'll be out in November.
Okay, can I ask the real elephant in the room? Will these become, whether it's TV, movies, they're made for this, let's just be honest, they're made for this.
Who's the producer?
Mr. Producer,
Executive producer.
Mr. EP,
Well, somebody's got to ask, right? And we've just been busy with these books at the moment and telling good stories and talking to people. And this has been interesting on Ghosts of Panama, because everybody we talk to is alive, right? As opposed to research, which is predominantly what Ghosts of Honolulu was in its effort. Yeah. Yeah, that's all I'll say.
okay, all right, I'll see you on the set. Hopefully on location in Honolulu, right? Okay. That's what I'm saying. All right. This one is for both of you. How did your real life experiences influence the authenticity of the storytelling characters on NCIS? Leon?
When we first started, the writers came out to the office. In fact, short story about Mark and how I first met him. By the way, Mark, do you remember this? Yeah. So Rick Warmack, who was the special agent in charge of our LA office at the time, had asked Mark to come out. We were having an inspection, headquarters inspection. Mark, can you come out and play a agent who's briefing a murder case that happened in Seal Beach? And none of us knew, even I didn't know this. But so Mark comes in, he's got a ball cap, a navy pea coat on, kind of like this, and he's briefing, not from this one, but he had a notepad. And I'm looking at these inspectors, and they're buying this, right? I'm like, don't they recognize who this guy is? So anyway, it took a while, and somebody goes, hey, something's not right. You must have said something wrong that an agent wouldn't say or something. But anyway, they were like, wait a minute, is this a real agent? So when that was over, Mark's walking by where my office was at the time. I was a recruiter, and he stopped to say hi and all of that, and I introduced myself, and I gave him one of these notepads, which is what we would give college kids when we go to campuses and recruit. Mark kept it and started using it on the show and scenes of the show months later. This was in like June or July, and he started filming in August. But in terms of real episodes in that, the first couple of seasons, we at that particular meeting, we had writers come out and they listened to stories from actual agents. And the first season, I think there was at least 4 episodes that were of real cases. We changed the names to protect the innocent, that kind of thing. But people who watched the show would say, I know that episode. And so that's how we first started. And then probably around season 5 or 6, we started to go with stuff that I'm like, that really wouldn't happen, kind of thing, right? So it became more creative, I'll put it that way in a positive light. It became more creative. So, but the procedures that we used, and by the way, I want to point out Mike Smith is over here. He took my place on the mothership, and he actually helped us on this book. He was in Hawaii. He was a technical advisor for NCIS Hawaii. And when that went down, he came over and replaced the old man on the mothership. So he knows and understands the real procedures, how you carry a weapon, what's your things. We're teaching actors like the one that's sitting in the office, in the audience right now. We teach them proper procedures. And when we do crime scenes, we do it as close to by the book as we can. There's certain things we have to take Hollywood license on, but if you ask any law enforcement person who's worked crime scenes, they'll tell you what we do exactly right and what we kind of fudge a little bit. But that's how the impact is done, stories and also procedures.
Because initially, you didn't even have, there wasn't there was no morgue at NCIS, right? There was, right?
No federal agency has a morgue, right? That's done by counties, and we contract with the county, the local, and overseas, they do have forensic pathology labs where if a body's found, they can do autopsies there. But most of those are brought back to Maryland, and it's done at the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology, which now has a different name. But we didn't have that. We had labs at the time, and the Abby character in the lab, well, our lab director actually designed that lab that they're still using based on what she told them 22 or 3 years ago now. And she did work with Polly, and David McCallum, God rest his soul, actually went to autopsies. Brian Dietzen, who's now that character, now moved up, he has also done autopsies. So one of the things I will say, and we used to take these guys to shoot. I've been shooting with Mark several times. And actually we did that for the spin-offs as well. So the realism and procedure is pretty much exact. The realism and storylines, you just gotta be entertained.
Mark, is there a specific moment you remember? Also a specific story of how you really brought authenticity to the show, something you did?
You got one? No, you know, an actor, it's an individual choice in how actors prepare or don't choose to do whatever they choose to do. I just, from the minute I met Rick Wormack, which is one of the agents I met to pal around with, every agent I met was wearing a coat and tie, except Rick Wormack. He was wearing a polo shirt, white t-shirt, and a sport coat. So as far as I was concerned, that's what I was gonna wear. He had a short haircut, and even before some people even knew I was doing it, I went out and got that haircut. And that was not good. There were a lot of unhappy people about that, but I always felt that haircut told me who the character was. And I also have, it's not odd, but I will call it odd, but it's an odd respect for the Marine background of that character. Leon's a Marine. Yeah, but
I had hair then.
But for me, it's about finding those nuggets that actors sometimes stumble on to say, this is not me, but I'm going to play this because that's an important part of the character, and how he walks, how he talks, how he speaks. If you do it right, I believe that it just becomes part of you. But we had a long time to practice on that show, so those pieces of Jethro Gibbs over so many years, there's a lot of people that are responsible for that, and most of those are creative, and certainly no one more than this guy here to my left.
By the way, Leanna, I want to ask you, because you know, here we are sitting in sunny California going through this moment, but back when you were an agent, could you have dreamed that this dream and what it's become, because you know, you really injected so much of the agency into Hollywood?
It's funny, my wife is standing, she's about to crack up laughing about this whole thing. But here's the story about the agency and Hollywood type of stuff. When the show first came out, our agents would always say, did you ever think there'd be a TV show about us? And the answer would be no. Did you ever think it would be a top drama? Oh, hell no. Right, no way. But one of the things I was going to point out about Mark, he would listen to the conversations that the visiting agents would have, and he kept hearing the acronym NIS. We still say NIS, NIS, and then you turn the thing around and the badge says SIN, SIN. The ladies always love that, but Mark picked up on that. He says, hey, is that what you guys do? And I says, yeah, that's within the family, we refer to ourselves as NIS. And he started doing that on the show. So.
All right, this is one more question, and this is an interesting one. Mark, what was the last concert you saw? What? I know. Well, look, I knew. I was like, oh boy, here we go. Here we go. Just throw it out there, Kev. Just throw it out there.
Probably Springsteen.
Yeah. Leon?
Last concert for
Yeah,
me?
last concert for you.
That's a good question. Last concert. What?
Shaka
Shaka. Just a month ago, Shaka Khan.
Shaka Khan.
At the
Well
Hollywood
done,
Bowl.
Leon.
Thank goodness your wife is here. You might as well sit right here. I have more questions. I do want to, first of all, thank everybody for coming out on this Saturday morning, but more importantly, thank you for grabbing this book because I really think you will enjoy it. But most importantly, I want to thank these two for building something that has changed the way we look at our American agencies. Because people in the government and people that do these dangerous jobs to keep us safe, they aren't honored enough. We don't have enough. It's like teachers. It's like the police. It's like so many people out there that we don't honor for doing the jobs they do. And so what you have done to honor these people and build something special in NCIS and the NCIS families, thank you so much for doing that. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, 21 seasons, Leah, come on, 21 seasons? It's crazy.
Thank you, Kevin. I know Mark and I really appreciate you coming out and doing
Anytime,
this.
Bill.
And for all the people that came out, and I hope you enjoy the book. I know both of us do. And you'll enjoy Goes to Panama as well, maybe even better. And hopefully better, right? We want to keep improving. That's kind of what we do. But we appreciate you coming out.
Mark, thanks for being here. What a treat it was for us today. And let's do this again for Ghost of Panama. I haven't got my copy yet. I just want to tell you, I haven't got my copy. It's coming. It's coming. Okay, all right. I'm waiting on that one too. But thanks everybody, and I'm sure these guys have some books to sign, so it's going to be a few minutes.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, guys, and thanks everybody.
Folks, we are going to start the signing in just a moment. We'll start with the first row, and we'll just go row by row, so feel free to relax in your seats until we get to your row.